In the grim darkness of the far future, we watch.
There are infinite universes bleeding through the cracks of reality, and sometimes the warp spits out something it cannot digest. Today's story explores what happens when a Dark Lord from a galaxy far, far away crashes into the brutal reality of the 41st millennium, where even the mightiest tyrant is just another soul screaming in the darkness. This is the tale of Darth Vader's arrival in Warhammer 40K. The warp storm that tore open above Kronos 7 wasn't natural. Even by the insane standards of the Imperium, this was different. Navigator Hesia Morvain felt it first, a wrongness that made her third eye weep tears of blood. The geometries were all incorrect, the currents flowing in patterns that violated every law of warp travel she'd learned in 3 centuries of service. Something was forcing its way through from a place that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, yet undeniably did. When the black pyramid of metal materialized in real space, every Auspex array in the system screamed warnings. It was vast, angular, bristling with weapons that predated anything in Imperial records. The Lambda-class shuttle tumbled from the dying cruiser's hangar, emergency thrusters firing erratically as reality reasserted itself around technology never designed for this universe's physics. It plunged through Kronos 7's atmosphere like a falling cathedral, trailing ethereal fire that burned in colors the human eye couldn't properly process. The impact carved a crater 300 meters wide into the Hive City's industrial district. 17,000 workers died instantly, their bodies flash vaporized by the heat of re-entry. The shuttle, impossibly intact despite forces that should have atomized it, sat in the smoking ruins, its hull etched with symbols that made scribes vomit when they tried to transcribe them later. Planetary Governor Maltheus Crane received the first reports in his administratum tower 40 kilometers away. A craft of unknown origin, advanced technology, possible Xenos contact. He did what any Imperial official would do when faced with the unknown and terrifying. He locked down 6 city sectors, deployed 3 regiments of PDF troops, and sent an urgent astropathic message screaming for help to anyone who would listen. The shuttle's ramp descended with the pneumatic hiss that sounded wrong in this reality. Too smooth, too mechanical, lacking the sacred oils and prayer-littered grinding of proper Imperial technology. Smoke billowed from within. The PDF soldiers, hastily arranged in firing lines around the crater's perimeter, tightened their grips on lasguns. Sergeant Venko had fought orcs and cultists in his 20 years of service. He knew fear, but this was different. The figure that emerged stood over 2 meters tall, encased in black armor that seemed to drink in light itself. A helmet with a triangular breathing apparatus, a cape that moved without wind, and the sound, Emperor preserve them, the sound, rhythmic breathing, mechanical and inevitable as a countdown to execution. It echoed across the crater, and 30 dozen soldiers felt their bladders clench. "Identify yourself, Xenos," shouted Venko, his voice cracking. "By order of the God Emperor, you will—" Darth Vader raised one hand. The force here was difficult, like moving through corrupted data, but his will was absolute. Venko rose 3 meters into the air, clawing at his throat as invisible fingers crushed his windpipe. The sergeant's lasgun clattered to the rockcrete. 20 seconds later, his corpse joined it. "Open fire!" someone screamed. Lasbolts lanced through the smoke, dozens of them, concentrated fire that would have dropped an orc knob. They splashed against Vader's armor, dissipating against energy shields that functioned on principles this universe didn't recognize. He strode through the barrage, one hand extended, and soldiers began flying backward, bones snapping as they impacted walls and rubble. One brave fool charged with a chainsword. He barely glanced at him. The chainsword's teeth shattered against an invisible barrier. The soldier found himself hanging in mid-air, then slammed into the ground with enough force to liquefy his internal organs. The massacre took 4 minutes. When it ended, Darth Vader stood alone in a field of corpses, his breathing the only sound. He looked up at the sky. Wrong stars, wrong constellations, everything alien and hostile. Somewhere in this universe was power. He could feel it, a presence that made even the Emperor Palpatine seem small. Something vast and broken and terrible beyond measure, calling out in psychic agony from across the void. If you crave more tales of dark crossovers and grimdark nightmares, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who support the channel, and you'll need that protection for what comes next. Darth Vader's corrupted ship systems came back online, feeding him fragmentary data about this reality. An Imperium, a god emperor, endless war across 1,000,000 worlds. He understood immediately. This was an empire that made the Galactic Empire look like a planetary government. And somewhere at its heart sat a being who knew what it meant to sacrifice everything for power and order. The Dark Lord of the Sith began walking towards the Hive City proper. He would find this emperor, one way or another.
The astropathic choir on Kronos 7th died screaming. All 17 of them, simultaneously, their minds burned out trying to transmit what they'd witnessed through psychic communion with the massacre site. Their final message reached the inquisitorial fortress station Vigilance Eternal as a garbled shriek of warning. Chaos touched, black armor, unnatural powers, immaterium resonance, but wrong. Send Malleus. Inquisitor Cassius Varn received the decoded fragments in his meditation chamber. He was old, even by Rejuvenat standards. 312 years of hunting daemons, traitors, and things that defied categorization. His augmentic left eye, blessed by the ecclesiarchy and inscribed with 6,000 protective wards, could see into the shallow warp. When he focused on the astropathic recording, it showed him something that made his ancient heart stutter. A silhouette of darkness that wasn't chaos, wasn't Xenos, wasn't anything in his extensive files. It was other. "Assemble Team Erasure," he commanded his attendant. "Full containment protocol. Assume warp entity manifestation. I want Aegis pattern null fields, sanctified ammunition, and a full detachment of Grey Knights on standby." The attendant hesitated. "My lord, the Grey Knights are engaged in—" "I don't care if they're dueling bloodthirsters in the Eye itself. Pull them out. What's on Kronos 7th is worse." 12 hours later, Varn's strike cruiser, Unforgiving Truth, translated into real space above Kronos 7th. His warband was 30 strong, stormtroopers with hellguns, 2 tech priests to analyze Xenos technology, an Eversor assassin in stasis, and his personal retinue of psychers bound in psychic dampeners.
Each soldier wore rosarius fields and carried blessed silver bolts. They were equipped to kill anything from a daemon prince to a hive tyrant. They would not be enough. Vader had carved a path 15 kilometers into the hive city. Behind him lay 3,000 corpses, PDF troopers, Arbites enforcers, even a handful of ministerium priests who'd tried to exorcise him with prayers and holy water. None had slowed him. The Force in this universe was corrupted, yes, but it was also vastly more powerful than anything he'd known. The psychic screaming of billions of terrified souls fed him strength beyond measure. Every death amplified his connection to this twisted power. He stood now in the ruins of an ecclesiarchy cathedral, studying the iconography. A corpse god on a golden throne, angels of death in power armor, an empire built on faith and fear and endless sacrifice. It was beautiful in its brutality. Vader had served Emperor Palpatine, but this was an empire that understood the truth. Only through suffering could order be maintained. The inquisitorial force deployed via gravchute, landing in a perfect cordon around the cathedral. Varn emerged from the dropship with his force staff crackling with psychic lightning. His psykers erected layered null fields designed to suppress even greater daemon manifestation. Tech priests activated lumen strips, bathing the area in blessed light. 30 hellguns trained on the cathedral entrance. Daemon, heretic, or whatever you are, you stand in violation of imperial law. Surrender yourself for inquisitorial judgment, or be destroyed. Vader's response was the snap hiss of a lightsaber igniting. The crimson blade cast bloody shadows as he walked from the cathedral, unhurried, inevitable. The null fields washed over him like water over stone, uncomfortable, but ultimately irrelevant. This wasn't warp sorcery. This was something these primitives had no defense against. Open fire! Hellgun beams, each one powerful enough to punch through ceramite, converged on Vader. He deflected them with casual precision, his lightsaber moving in arcs too fast for unaugmented eyes to follow. Reflected shots killed 6 stormtroopers in the first 3 seconds. The tech priest's analysis cogitators crashed trying to classify the energy blade's properties. Varn thrust his force staff forward, channeling psychic power blessed by the Emperor himself. Lightning erupted, enough raw warp energy to disintegrate a lesser daemon. Vader caught it on his lightsaber, the blade somehow earthing energies that should have been impossible to block physically. Then he raised his other hand. The Inquisitor felt his own psychic might turned against him, compressed and reflected back through connections he didn't understand. He flew backward, smashing through a rockcrete wall. His rosarius field shattered. 3 ribs cracked. He tasted blood. "Activate the Eversor," he gasped into his vox. The stasis field deactivated. The Eversor assassin emerged in a blur of chemically enhanced rage, moving at speeds that left after images. Paired neurogauntlets sparked with disruptor fields. It was designed to kill Space Marine captains in single combat. It had once decapitated an Orc war boss in under 10 seconds. Vader's lightsaber took its head off in one economic strike. The body, still pumped with stims, ran another 3 steps before collapsing. The power blade had cauterized everything so thoroughly that even the assassin's boosted healing couldn't compensate. The remaining stormtroopers broke. 15 years of inquisitorial conditioning shattered in the face of something their training couldn't explain. They ran, and Vader let them. Fear was a weapon, and these survivors would spread it. Varn struggled to his feet, blood running from his nose and ears. His psykers were catatonic, their minds overloaded trying to understand what they had witnessed. One tech priest had removed his own optics, muttering binary prayers for forgiveness for seeing what shouldn't exist. "What are you?" he wheezed. Vader looked down at the broken Inquisitor. Through the Force, he sensed this man's conviction, his absolute faith in his corpse god Emperor. It reminded him of the Jedi at their most dogmatic, fools who served powers they didn't understand. "I am what your Emperor once was, a man who sacrificed everything for power and order. Take me to him. We have much to discuss." Varn's augmentic eye focused, seeing through layers of reality. This creature wasn't chaos-touched. It was something else entirely. Something that might be negotiated with, or something that would kill them all. He triggered his emergency beacon. Within an hour, the message would reach Terra. The Emperor needed to know something had entered his Imperium that even the Inquisition couldn't stop.
The Death Company arrived on Chronos 7 like a crimson nightmare. 12 blood angels so far gone to the Black Rage that they believed themselves to be Sanguinius himself, reliving the siege of Terra in endless, maddening loop. They wore black armor adorned with blood drops and golden wings, wielding chain swords and bolt pistols with the fury of demigods. Chaplain Tethros guided them from his jump pack, reciting the litanies of hate, channeling their madness toward the enemy that had humiliated the Inquisition. The Blood Angels had been in system when Varn's emergency beacon activated. Chapter Master Dante himself had authorized the deployment after reviewing the picked captures. Something that could defeat an inquisitorial kill team and shrug off psychic assault required the Emperor's finest. And if the Death Company could be aimed at it, 2 problems solved with 1 deployment. They found Vader in the ruins of the Governor's palace, standing over Maltheus Crane's corpse. The Governor had tried to negotiate, offering tithes and compliance. Vader had crushed his throat for wasting time. The Dark Lord was studying a holomap of the sector when he sensed them coming, genetically enhanced warriors burning with barely contained rage and grief. Tethros landed 20 meters away, his Crozius Arcanum crackling with power. "Abomination, you stand in the presence of the Blood Angels, sons of Sanguinius, the great angel. In the name of the Emperor, you will—" The Death Company Marine didn't wait for the speech to finish. Brother Malachim screamed, "Horus!" and launched himself forward with his jump pack, chainsword raised high. 8 centuries of training and genetic enhancement behind every movement. He'd killed Chaos champions and Orc war bosses. He was death incarnate. Vader's lightsaber met the chainsword in a shower of sparks. The blade's molecular teeth shattered against the energy field, fragments spinning away like shrapnel. Malachim's momentum carried him past, and Vader's follow-through took his head off at the neck. The body crashed into rubble, gene-enhanced blood painting the rockcrete crimson. "Blood for Sanguinius!" The remaining 11 charged as one. What followed was a symphony of violence that would have made even Khorne pause in appreciation. The Death Company fought with the skill of Space Marines and the fury of madmen. They came at Vader from all angles, using their jump packs for 3-dimensional combat, their bolt pistols barking mass reactive death, their chainswords howling for blood. Vader moved through them like a shadow given form. His lightsaber was everywhere at once, deflecting bolts with impossible precision, severing limbs, finding gaps in ceramite armor that shouldn't exist.
But these weren't ordinary soldiers. Brother Castiel took a lightsaber through the torso and kept fighting for 30 seconds, his Laraman cells working overtime until Vader telekinetically crushed his hearts. Brother Raphael lost both arms and tried to headbutt the Dark Lord, screaming litanies through a throat half-severed. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this battle chills your soul. The galaxy has never seen a clash like this. Tethros watched in horror as his death company was systematically dismantled. These were warriors who'd fought greater daemons, who'd held breaches against tyrannid swarms, who feared nothing because they were already lost to madness. And this thing in black armor was killing them like they were scouts? He activated his jump pack and dove into the fray, Crozius raised. By the blood of Sanguinius and the will of the Emperor! The holy weapon connected with Vader's shoulder guard, and blessed lightning erupted. For the first time, the Dark Lord staggered. Vader felt something in the chaplain's weapon that the other attacks had lacked. Faith made manifest, psychic resonance channeled through sacred symbols. It was similar to the Force, but twisted through religious fervor, dangerous in its own way. 3 remaining Death Company Marines pressed the advantage. They fought as Sanguinius had taught them 10,000 years ago, as one organism with 4 bodies. Chain swords carved from 3 angles, while Tethros hammered with his Crozius. For 5 seconds, Vader was forced on the defensive. Then he extended both hands. The Force choke took all 4 simultaneously. They hung suspended, their superhuman strength meaningless against telekinetic pressure that crushed their throats from the inside. Tethros tried to speak a prayer, but no air reached his lungs. His Crozius fell from spasming fingers. But Space Marines die hard. Brother Dante, not the chapter master, but a Death Company Marine who believed himself to be Sanguinius, made one final leap. His jump pack sputtered, damaged from earlier combat. He fell short, landing at Vader's feet. With his last strength, he looked up at the Dark Lord. "Father," he whispered, seeing through his madness for one crystal moment. "Father, forgive me. I failed you at the Eternity Gate." Vader paused. Something in the Marine's words, in his absolute conviction of failure and redemption, struck a chord. This warrior believed he was reliving his Primarch's death, believed he'd failed his Emperor father at the moment of greatest need. The grief was genuine, all-consuming, a wound that would never heal. Vader understood that grief intimately. He released the Force choke. The 4 Space Marines collapsed, gasping. Tethros stared up in shock, his vision swimming. Why spare us?" "You are warriors shaped by your father's death. You know the pain of serving an emperor who demanded everything, who took your humanity and gave you only duty and suffering in return." He looked at Brother Dante, who lay weeping tears of blood, lost again in his madness. "I was also remade by my master, also sacrificed on the altar of power. We are not so different, you and I." The chaplain struggled to his knees, gripping his Crozius. Then you understand. The Emperor protects, but at terrible cost. Your Emperor sits on his golden throne, a corpse sustained by suffering. Mine betrayed me and burned in his own throne room. Both required monsters to maintain their empires. Both created us. The chaplain's mind reeled. This was tech heresy, bioheresy, and possibly actual heresy. but his Picer sense told him the thing before him spoke truth, at least as it understood it. "What do you want?" "To meet him," Vader said simply. "Your God Emperor. We have much to discuss about the price of power and the empires built on the backs of broken sons." Tethros knew this decision was above his rank, but 12 Death Company brothers lay dead or dying. This entity had defeated them with contempt, then showed mercy for reasons that almost made sense. The Inquisition had already failed. Perhaps only the Emperor himself could judge this threat. "I will take you to Terra," Tethros said, each word agony. "But know this, if you bring ruin to the throne world, 10,000 chapters will hunt you to the last stars." Vader's respirator breathed its mechanical rhythm. "I expect nothing less." Terra, the throne world. Humanity's cradle and grave, wrapped in layer upon layer of Gothic spires, continent-spanning fortresses, and the psychic screaming of quadrillions of souls. The unforgiving truth translated into real space at the edge of the soul system, and Vader felt it immediately. A presence so vast it made Emperor Palpatine seem like a candle next to a star. The God Emperor of mankind, 10,000 years entombed, burning with psychic might that illuminated the warp itself. The Imperial Fist's fleet that intercepted them could have glassed worlds. 30 warships, each kilometers long, weapons hot, and shields raised. Captain General Trajan Valoris of the Adeptus Custodes himself voxed from the battle barge Eternal Vigil, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Inquisitor Varn, explain why you bring an unidentified psyker to the heart of the Imperium. One word of deception, and we open fire." Varn, still recovering from cracked ribs and psychic backlash, chose his words carefully. "Captain General, what we carry is beyond inquisitorial classification. It defeated a full kill team, dismantled a death company, and claims no allegiance to chaos. It requests audience with the Emperor himself." Silence. Then, "Stand by for boarding." The custodian guard that teleported aboard were demigods in Oramite armor. Each was worth 100 space marines, their guardian spears crackling with power fields that could cleave land raiders. They surrounded Vader in the ship's hold with precision that spoke of 10 millennia protecting humanity's greatest treasure. Valoris himself stood before the Dark Lord, his ancient eyes reading threat assessments in microseconds. "I am Trajan Valoris, Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, Shield of the Emperor, Master of the Legions of Terra. You will submit to psychic screening, submit to null field restraint, and submit to his judgment. Refuse any of these, and you die here." Vader assessed the Golden Warriors with cold calculation. They were superior to the Space Marines, faster, stronger, their weapons master-crafted, their tactical coordination flawless. A fight would be difficult, costly, and pointless. He hadn't come to Terra to battle its defenders. "I submit to his judgment alone," Vader said. "Your psychic screening would fail. Your null fields are irrelevant. Your Emperor knows this already. He has been watching since I arrived in his Imperium." Valoris's expression didn't change, but his grip on his guardian spear tightened, because the abomination was right. For 3 days the Emperor had been unusually active, his psychic presence stirring in ways not seen in centuries. The Astronomican had flickered with something almost like curiosity. "Bind him in warding chains. If he resists, kill him." They brought forth chains inscribed with every protective rune known to the Imperium, blessed by the ecclesiarchy, sanctified in the blood of saints. The custodians clamped them around Vader's wrists and neck. He allowed it. The chains burned with holy light would have driven a demon screaming back into the warp. Vader found them mildly uncomfortable, nothing more. The procession through the Imperial Palace took hours, through the Eternity Gate, past 10,000 remembrancers documenting every moment, through halls where the Primarchs themselves had walked. Vader observed everything: the religious fervor, the military precision, the absolute conviction that this corpse god somehow held back the darkness. It was familiar. The Empire had believed the same of Palpatine. They reached the Sanctum Imperialis, the chamber of the Golden Throne. The custodians and his custodians took position at precise intervals, their spears raised. Tech priests of the Mechanicus monitored the Emperor's life support, their augmentic eyes streaming data. Silent sisters of the Adeptus Sororitas stood with their null presence like voids in reality, all of them prepared to die defending their master. The doors opened. Vader stepped forward and saw him. The God Emperor of mankind sat entombed in the Golden Throne, his body a desiccated corpse sustained by the sacrifice of 1,000 psychers daily. Tubes and cables burrowed into withered flesh. Machinery older than some civilizations kept him suspended between life and death. But his psychic presence was incandescent, vast beyond measure, a consciousness that touched every human soul in the galaxy. Vader approached until the custodian's spears barred further progress. 20 meters from the throne, he knelt, not in submission, but in recognition. 2 emperors, 2 tyrants, 2 beings who'd sacrificed everything for power and order. The Emperor's psychic voice touched Vader's mind, and it was like standing in a star's corona. Not words, but pure conceptual transmission. Understanding flowing between 2 beings who'd both been burned and remade by power. I know what you are. From beyond, from a universe where the warp does not scream so loudly. Yes, Vader spoke aloud, knowing the Emperor heard his thoughts as clearly as his words. I served an Emperor who betrayed me, who remade me as a weapon and called it salvation. You did the same to your sons. I did what was necessary, as you did, as all who bear the weight of empire must. Your Primarchs, your Thunder Warriors, your custodians, all tools, all sacrifices. I know that burden. I was Anakin Skywalker once. Now I am only Vader, the sword in the darkness. The psychic communion deepened. The Emperor showed Vader the fall of Horus, the betrayal at Eternity Gate, the moment he'd been forced to kill his most beloved son. The agony of that choice, the necessity of it, the price of unity and order. Vader showed the Emperor his own fall, Mustafar's flames, Padme's death, the moment Anakin Skywalker burned and only Darth Vader remained. The dark side's seduction and the Empire's cold necessity. 2 fathers who'd sacrificed their sons, 2 rulers who'd built empires on suffering, 2 beings who understood the terrible mathematics of power, that compassion was weakness, that mercy invited ruin, that only through strength could civilization survive. You seek purpose in this universe. You seek absolution that will never come. I seek service, an empire that deserves a monster like me. Your Imperium is vast, eternal, uncompromising. You sit on this throne for 10,000 years, burning alive to hold back the darkness. That is conviction I can respect. And what would you be, Darth Vader? Another Primarch? Another custodian? Another tool in my eternal war? I would be your executioner, the blade you wield against those who threaten your Imperium. I have no loyalty to your corpse god, no faith in your religion, but I understand duty, I understand sacrifice. Point me at your enemies, and I will not fail. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. The custodians tensed, prepared for the order to strike. Valoris's jaw clenched. This was madness, heresy. Allowing this thing into the Emperor's service would be accepted. The word resonated through the chamber like a thunderclap. Every tech priest stopped mid-prayer. Every silent sister felt it through their null presence. The Emperor had spoken, and his will was absolute. You will serve as Executor Supreme. You will answer to no one but me. You will hunt the traitors, the heretics, the Xenos that threaten my Imperium. And when your service ends, when you finally fall, you will have earned your death. Vader rose, the blessed chains falling away like dust. I require no reward but purpose. Show me your enemies, God Emperor. I will show you what a Sith Lord can do.
The traitor Titan walked through the ruins of Hive Mortalis like a god of ancient myth, its corrupted war horn shaking foundations 5 kilometers away. Foes lament, a Reaver-class engine that had turned to chaos during the heresy, bore the marks of 10,000 years of slaughter. Its armor writhed with demonic faces, its void shields pulsed with warped flame, and its melta-cannon had vaporized 3 loyal warlord titans in the previous hour. The Mechanicus had declared it unstoppable. The Imperial Guard had lost 40,000 soldiers trying to bring it down. Even the Grey Knights had retreated after losing half their strike force to its corrupted machine spirit. Darth Vader stood in its shadow, alone, waiting. The past 6 months had been a revelation. The Emperor had given him access to the Imperium's archives, its technology, its darkest secrets. Vader had studied the Chaos Gods and found them disappointingly familiar, the dark side by other names, wearing different masks. He'd analyzed Imperial weapons and found them crude but effective. He'd watched billions die in the Imperium's name and understood, finally, that he'd found an empire that matched his own capacity for necessary evil. His first assignments had been tests. A gene-stealer coat on Pythos 4, exterminated to the last infected soul. A rogue inquisitor consorting with Chinchian daemons, executed before his own conclave. A dark Eldar raiding party, their skimmers torn from the sky by telekinetic fury before Vader boarded their flagship and painted its corridors with alien blood. Each victory had been absolute, brutal, and had sent a message across the Imperium. The Emperor had a new weapon, and it was terror incarnate. But this was the true test. The Mechanicus had begged the Emperor to dispatch his new executor against foes' lament. If Vader could kill a corrupted Titan, he would prove his worth beyond question. The Reaver's corrupted tech priest princeps, a thing that was once human, named Kallus the Thrice Damned, laughed through voxcasters that made reality bleed. The Emperor sends one man, one tiny insect against a god of war. Your corpse master grows desperate. Vader ignited his lightsaber.
The crimson blade seemed pitifully small against the 50-meter war machine, but he'd toppled governments with less. The Titan's plasma blast gun fired first, a sun-hot lance of destruction that could crack open battleships. Vader leapt, the force propelling him in an arc that defied physics. The plasma scorched the rockcrete where he'd stood, melting it to glass. He landed on a ruined manufactorium tower, already moving as the Titan's Gatling blaster tracked him, each shell the size of a man. He ran up the crumbling structure, deflecting what he could, dodging what he couldn't, the force screaming warnings microseconds before each shot. The tower exploded behind him. He jumped again, higher, impossibly high, and landed on the Titan's right arm as its melta-cannon swiveled to target him. Kala screamed in rage and activated the arm-mounted flamers. Promethium erupted, temperatures hot enough to melt ceramite. Vader extended his hand, and the flames parted around him like the Red Sea before Moses, held back by telekinetic barriers that strained even his formidable will. The heat was intense enough that his respirator's cooling system screamed warnings, but he pushed forward, one step at a time, toward the Titan's torso. The corrupted machine spirit tried to buck him off, the Titan lurching and twisting with unnatural grace. Demonic essences within the metal screamed at him in languages that predated humanity, promising power and damnation. Vader had heard the dark side whisper similar promises for decades. He ignored them as background noise. He reached the Titan's head, where the Princeps chamber lay buried beneath meters of corrupted armor. His lightsaber plunged into the metal, and he began to cut. The blade carved through adamantium plating, designed to withstand lance strikes, molecular bonds severing before the weapon's impossible heat. Sparks showered around him as alarms wailed throughout the machine. Kallus triggered every defensive system simultaneously. Automated bolters emerged from hidden ports, firing explosive rounds at point-blank range. Static dischargers activated, wreathing the Titan's head in lethal electricity. Internal heat sinks vented superheated coolant directly at the intruder. Comment your theories below. Can even a Sith Lord survive this? Vader weathered it all. The Force with his shield, his armor, his weapon. He felt each bullet before it arrived, twisted electricity around him rather than through him, used telekinesis to redirect coolant before it could boil him alive. The pain was immense. His psionics were never designed for this universe's brutal conditions. But pain was an old friend. Pain was clarity. His lightsaber completed the circle. A 10-meter section of the Titan's head armor fell away, revealing the Princeps chamber within. Kallus sat in his amniotic tank, his body fused with cables and data ports, his flesh corrupted into something that screamed in colors. The corrupted tech priest saw Vader standing at the breach, silhouetted against the burning sky, and knew terror for the first time in millennia. "Impossible," Kallus whispered through voxcasters embedded in his throat. "You are only human, only flesh. You can't." "I am what was necessary," Vader said, and thrust his hand forward. The Force invaded the Princeps chamber like a scalpel to the brain. Vader felt the corrupted machine spirit, the daemon essence bound within the Titan's core, and the twisted consciousness of Kallus all screaming in unison. He grabbed them all with telekinetic precision and squeezed. The daemon shrieked and was expelled back into the warp. The machine spirit, corrupted for 10,000 years, found itself briefly, mercifully free, and embraced death. Kallus's mind shattered like glass as Vader crushed his consciousness into nothingness. Foe's lament stumbled, its weapons went silent, its void shields collapsed. For one moment, the corrupted Titan was simply a machine, empty of all the malevolence that had sustained it. Then Vader reached deeper and found the plasma reactor core and used the Force to destabilize its containment fields. He leapt clear as the Titan began to collapse, its legs buckling, its massive frame toppling forward like a felled tree. The reactor went critical 3 seconds later. The explosion was visible from orbit, a miniature sun blooming in the heart of Hive Mortalis, vaporizing everything within 2 kilometers. Vader landed 300 meters away, his cape singed, his armor scorched, but standing. Behind him, where foes' lament had stood, there was only a crater of molten glass and twisted metal. The Mechanicus observers, watching from their sensor posts, fell to their knees chanting prayers to the Omniscius. The Imperial Guard survivors who had witnessed the battle from their trenches would tell stories of this moment for the rest of their lives. Across the Imperium, word would spread. The Emperor's Executor Supreme had killed a corrupted Titan in single combat. On Terra, deep within the Golden Throne, the God Emperor of mankind allowed himself something that might have been satisfaction. He had been right. This weapon from another universe, this broken lord from a galaxy far away, had proven its worth. Darth Vader was exactly what the Imperium needed. A monster who could kill monsters, a tyrant who could enforce tyranny, a darkness that could fight the dark. Vader looked up at the ash-choked sky, feeling the Emperor's distant approval through their psychic link. For the first time since Mustafar, since Padme's death, since everything that mattered had burned away, he felt something approaching purpose. The 51st millennium was an age of endless war, where 1 trillion souls died every day in the Emperor's name. It was brutal. It was merciless. It was everything Anakin Skywalker would have wept to see. But Darth Vader was finally home. In the years that followed, the name Darth Vader became legend across the Imperium. Inquisitors whispered it in fearful reverence. Chaos champions learned to dread the mechanical breathing that preceded their deaths. Xenos warlords discovered that their powers meant nothing against a will forged in a different universe's fires. The Executor Supreme served without mercy, without hesitation, without compromise. He was the Emperor's dark mirror, a broken father enforcing the will of another broken father, both sustained by duty when love had long since burned away. The Emperor never told Vader about redemption because neither of them believed in it anymore. There was only service, only duty, only the endless grinding of war across 1,000,000 worlds. And perhaps that was its own form of peace, to finally accept what you'd become and use it for something greater than yourself. Some say Vader still serves, 10,000 years later, an immortal executioner sustained by the Emperor's psychic might. Others claim he fell in battle against Abaddon the Despoiler, taking 13 Chaos champions with him into death. The Inquisition has sealed all records, declaring them too dangerous for mortal eyes. But on quiet nights, in the deep void between stars, naval officers sometimes report a strange sound over the Vox. Rhythmic, mechanical breathing that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of space. And where that sound is heard, the Emperor's enemies soon follow, already marked for death by a Dark Lord who found his purpose in the Grimdark Future, where there is only war. The Emperor protects, but sometimes he protects with monsters. And Darth Vader was the finest monster the 41st millennium had ever seen.